Mr. Coates.
Confirm that this role is filled by someone that's selected by the chancellor and one of his staff, that this is not a board change of positions here. There's a lot of narrative going around about us selecting people out there, and this is to confirm this is the chancellor's decision to make this choice to fill this role.
So conflict. The approval. As happened.
Okay. Thank you very much. I will have to, every time I talk to a group of trustees, for the last 2 years, I have to start out with thank you. It's been, to say it's been a trying almost 2 years, hard to believe. Since we entered into this different world we're living in right now. But you guys, like everybody throughout the system, have kept things on an even keel through a lot of headwinds, and the ability to keep offering quality education to citizens of North Carolina, the ability to, what you've done with your fundraising campaign in the middle of all this, everything you've done here makes me proud as a member of the Board of Governors that I get a chance to work with you guys, and that you keep this going on through very, very, very difficult times. So I want to say thank you, first and foremost, Chancellor and all the board and all your staff and faculty and students and everything here, for making the best of a very bad situation and maintaining the high level of excellence that we expect. So thank you very much. Great to be here with you. Enjoyed spending some time with you the other night, having dinner with you. It's good to catch up with some of you I haven't seen in a while. Things have been a little slow until last week, Board of Governors. So we did not have a December meeting. We did our trustee training in November. So we didn't have a real substantial business agenda then, but that changed. We jumped right into a discussion on tuition and fees. We jumped into a discussion on funding formula. And I know there's a lot of issues and a lot of angst about that. And we'll be happy to sit and talk a little bit more about that at some time. But we're, as you guys have dealt with here, we're in the same boat times 16, 17. So, we're trying to work our way through the issues that were presented by the pandemic. And, I think we've come out pretty well across the system. Most of our schools are doing very well. But we do have some challenges still. We do have some challenges. And particularly some of our smaller schools really have some financial challenges. So we're trying to work through a way that's fair and equitable to everybody. Dr. Jones, I'm not a doctor, but I will use the Hippocratic Oath, first do no harms. That's my goal, is first do no harm to any of our institutions through this funding formula change. So that's going to be my approach to these discussions as we go forward. And Chancellor and I had a brief conversation, and we're going to continue that about particular challenges, particularly to UNC-Chapel Hill and NC State, and even UNC Charlotte and Appalachian and North Carolina A&T to some extent. So we'll be cognizant of that going forward. Tuition and fees, y'all know we've done a great job again. Thank you. Done a great job in keeping tuition and fees down. I feel like probably the thing I'm most proud of in my now 11 years as a member of the Board of Governors is we have been able to really slow the rate of growth of tuition and fee increases. Sometimes they're necessary. I understand that. And I'm always willing to talk and listen to good proposals. But I really thank y'all for keeping your pencil sharpened and doing a great job on tuition and fee requests as we've gone along. I personally think we need to look at some bigger issues around tuition and fees. Maybe it's differentiated tuition for high demand programs, high cost programs, or I don't like going the fee route. We did it, I know, here with the MBA school, with the undergrad business school, which to me was a great example of what a university education can be all about. $4,000 investment by a student and a $20,000+ increased income for the rest of their working life. That's a good math lesson right there. So, that's something I think we need to talk about. We need to explore those kind of things for those real high demand, real high cost of delivery programs to allow you some leeways. But we'll have that discussion as we go forward on tuition and fees. Other than that, those are the two big things that we have going on. Happy to entertain any questions if anybody's got anything, or talk on any other specific topic that anybody may want to know something about.
Have questions for Dr.
Everybody's got to do something well, So. Well, it's not often I wear 2 Carolina blue ties in a week, so I will say that. But really appreciate being here. And Mr. Chairman, I don't have children, so I don't have tuition. I don't have weddings to pay for. I gotta spend money on something. So yeah. Well, I have enjoyed my time working with y'all, and I'm rotating off as governance chair this summer, but I hope to still be on the governance committee for my last year because I've enjoyed the work and have really enjoyed working with you very much. And again, thank you on behalf of the university for all you do to keep things going and keep up the level of excellence that the whole state of North Carolina expects from our whole system, but particularly from UNC-Chapel Hill.
Well,
Thank you, sir. And I'll be around.
and thank you.
Need to have a longer conversation about that.
All right, great. It's good to hear from you. Good morning. To the full Board of Trustees. It's nice last week. I was telling members of the board that 11 miles was first. I texted a picture to Vice Chair Pryor. It was about a 7-foot snowman. And, and we've enjoyed being here at the Rizzo Center. It's been okay for you. Back again. Next meeting. It's been positive. COVID continues to be top secret concern. Masks, for the most part, I'm not wearing it while I read. Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I'm doubling up. Sorry about that. The university's response to COVID has been strong and successful both last semester and so far this spring. We're also starting to emerge to a point where other priorities at the university can start to take center stage. Talking with the chancellor this week, at the university, we're somewhere near 90% of classes in person as an experience. Again, I believe it is important to express admiration for our faculty who continue to teach, perform research, and mentor students every day. The staff of the university, from senior administrators to team members performing all levels of services on campus, are fantastic. Nothing less than fantastic in their devotion and commitment to making UNC the great place that it is. Thank you for your service and know that you are indeed appreciated. From the board perspective, I want to thank Trustee Marty Kotis and Board Secretary Malcolm Turner for agreeing to chair and co-chair the new Audit, Compliance, and Risk Management Committee. Thank you, gentlemen. The formation of this committee is a solid governance structural creation, gives Dean Weber and his team a place to report, as well as Vice Chancellor George Battle. I think both are here today. I saw both. Thank you, gentlemen. Over the last 6 months, since this current Board of Trustees began serving as a group, we've consistently stated several objectives. We focused on assisting the university's efforts to be fiscally responsible. The board continues to promote the economic engine of the university to benefit the state of North Carolina. We're committed to continuing the now more than 230-year effort of making this place the absolute best and most special experiential learning environment in the world. We are also persistent in our beliefs that Carolina should be a place where diverse ideas and viewpoints from all spectrums should be respected. To that end, I'd refer back to July of 2019. Shortly before being sworn in as a board member, I attended a board orientation along with some other current members of the board. I believe Mr. Davis was there. I know Mr. Pryor was there. I think Miss Artis Neal was there as well. I know for sure they were. One afternoon during the session, there was a breakout about finances of the university. That's the day I learned that the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill actually operated without what I would describe as a unified budget. What our current team and system office describes as an all funds budget. There were some 14 or so odd different budgets operating throughout multiple schools and divisions at the university. After that orientation session and subsequent meetings of the Board of Trustees, the Board of Governors, and with the renewed internal focus from the administration, Chancellor Guswitz and his team, that journey to an all funds budget really began. It started about that time. During the creation of a new budget process, it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that a budget imbalance was discovered. The total was $100 million in a structural deficit. Since that deficit's full realization, not only has the university survived and thrived during COVID, schools and departments have contributed to a combination of both cuts and reallocation of resources to address the deficit. We either are already or soon will be in balance. Nate Knuffman and his team, Bubba Cunningham in the athletic department, and the deans at every school and all levels of the administration really deserve a lot of credit in the eventual outcome. When we meet again, it's anticipated that this board will be presented with the first all funds budget for approval. The unified budget is an achievement that will really be a catalyst for forward momentum. In actuality, you're shooting in the dark with respect to implementing a strategic plan without a firm grasp of what resources you actually have to make things happen. And if we've got one picture, a big picture, it gives the chancellor, his team, this board, and all decision makers at the university a clear picture of what resources are available to help achieve the goals stated in the strategic plan. We are also focused on making sure that we utilize the legislative appropriations made to Carolina and that they are plugged in to part of the economic engine of this state. $70 million appropriated to the North Carolina Policy Collaboratory, which facilitates the dissemination of policy and research expertise of the University of North Carolina for the purpose of practical applications and use. Dr. Jeff Warren's work as the executive director is nothing less than exciting. Carolina also receives significant funding for the READY program, which will allow UNC to be a leader and continue the research and creation of practical solutions for future public health issues, including another pandemic if one should arise. $60 million for the nursing school's facilities, $75 million for the business school expansion, several million additional dollars for repair of facilities on campus, and the continuing underlying support of the university through appropriations. All of that support continues to make Chapel Hill the most quality education available on the planet. The success of the campaign for Carolina cannot be understated. Governor Powers, you mentioned it. Thank you for that mention. I know that I see that Vice Chancellor Ruth is present today. We got the announcement earlier, several weeks before the meeting about the reaching of the $4.25 billion campaign goal. With that announcement being reached, Carolina is being positioned to take advantage of the future. We are positioned to support all corners of the university's mission in the years and decades ahead. As Vice Chancellor Ruth stated, he stated it yesterday in the External Affairs Committee, we're not done. The campaign will continue through the end of the year with renewed focus on professorships and scholarships. They will support and keep our world-class faculty on campus, doing their job both in a research capacity and teaching students, and it will help us attract the best students to this campus. I'll now move to yesterday when Chancellor Guskiewicz appeared in front of the board during the University Affairs Committee, along with Professor Chris Clemens, soon to be Provost Clemens, to remind us that in March 2020, the Board of Trustees, at its regular meeting, which coincidentally happened, I believe, right after the pandemic was sort of announced, maybe even 10 days after that. But the board at that time endorsed a new School of Data Science. And I believe it's called, and its proposed name would be the new School of Data Science and Society. The School of Data Science is a Carolina opportunity we cannot pass up on. We cannot afford to wait, and the state of North Carolina cannot afford for us to wait. As Professor Clemens stated yesterday, we need to produce the workforce for this state. With the increasing emphasis on technology and corporations finding North Carolina to be an attractive place to locate their business operations, we are charged with providing them with the workforce of the future. I want to commend Gordon Merklin, Nate Knuffman, and their team with respect to the proposed Porthole Alley project. This is a game-changing capital project that will absolutely help transform the 100 block of Franklin Street. This will include the visitor center, undergraduate admissions department, some retail opportunities, and possibly an alumni outpost even. And there's opportunity for UNC institutes and some departments to make that part of Franklin Street their home. That's a game changer, I think, for the town of Chapel Hill, and begins, this board heard a proposal, it may have been even the previous board, but we heard a proposal from Doug Rothwell and his group on economic development, and Trustee Patel has been involved in that effort for the university, reaching out and partnering with the town of Chapel Hill. That 100 block of Franklin Street has been such an integral part of the Carolina brand over the years. From alumni and from visitors to campus, it's really important, I believe, that we continue that support. The Strategic Initiative Committee is supporting faculty development of a leadership program available to all students on campus, regardless of their area of study. Several leadership programs exist on campus, but we're encouraging and working to support leadership training for all Carolina students. Trustee Jones, I want to thank you for your efforts on that, and I know that there's more to come on that. That leadership initiative will give us an intentional effort on teaching students to lead at all levels of their careers in whatever field they choose to pursue. I'd also like to highlight a small but important class offering from the business school that will begin this fall, Business 286. Is that correct, Mr. Jones? Did I get that right? I think it's 286, which will be a fantastic course designed to teach students about personal finance issues, including student debt, basic money management, and other financial skills. I want to really thank the business school for that effort. I know that Doug Shackelford and Chip Snively have worked really hard on that. So thank you to Professor Snively and Dean Shackelford. There's no question this is an exciting time for leadership of the university. Our new provost officially begins his tenure next week. We have active dean searches for the journalism school, the School of Dentistry, School of Public Health, the Pharmacy School, and the College of Arts and Sciences. I didn't miss one, did I? Think I got them. They're all in full swing. Soon there will also be a search for a new dean of the School of Government. I want to thank Mike Smith for all his leadership over the School of Government. Anybody that's ever worked at any, I think that school touches a lot of this state, from county commissioners. Trustee McCullen and I were talking about that last night, to judges, to prosecutors, to city councilmen, urban planners, rural planners, you name it. If you're affecting North Carolina in any way, shape, or form with government, you've been touched by our School of Government. I want to thank Mike Smith for his service. Look forward to the year ahead for him and the search for his successor. All of these developments and areas of focus are undergirded by the success of the students here on campus and after graduation. So the first remarks I gave 6 months ago focused on moving forward. Moving forward is important. Continue to focus on the things that are important. Experiential education on campus. The experience of students being here on campus, having hands-on learning. Going to basketball games, going to football games, having the college experience, learning to be adults and to grow into young men, young women, and people that can really be leaders and success stories across not only North Carolina, but the nation and the world. Keeping UNC an affordable education for all students. Governor Powers, you mentioned that in your remarks. Offering courses and an education that gives graduates the opportunity to succeed, and educating graduates who can support North Carolina's growing and changing economy, and continuing to foster UNC as a cutting-edge research enterprise that solves the world's problems. And we're going to hear from Mr. Magnuson, Dr. Magnuson, on that later today. Those are our top priorities. They're fantastic. I want to thank this board. It's a working board. I mentioned that yesterday. Every member of this board is serving on committees and work groups outside of just this board meeting to really effectuate a lot of good things here at Carolina. So I want to thank the board members for their service, and thank Student Body President Lamar. Richard, you have two hats as both a trustee and president of the student body. Not only that, I think you're in the middle of your fellowship, back and forth from Chapel Hill to DC, and still, putting your nose to the grindstone on classes. So I want to thank you for that. That's all my remarks. At this time, I'll turn it over to Chancellor Guskowitz.
Oh, you're not. Okay. All right. Well, good morning. It's great to be back with everyone. And it's great to see everyone at the game last evening. Bubba, if you can just schedule the rest of our men's basketball games at home, I think we're going to be in good shape. That should be easy to do. I did talk to Commissioner Phillips last night and tried to put a plug in for that. So got a great record at home. And if you get a chance, get out to see our women's basketball team plays this Saturday against State, which is a very tough battle. NC State's women's team is, what are they ranked, Governor Powers? They're third. So it should be fun over at Carmichael Arena if you can get over to see the women. But I just want to, and Governor Powers, thanks for joining us, both for dinner on, I don't know what, Tuesday night, I guess, and then being here today. Appreciate all your support. I just want to start off by acknowledging the campus community and how we've come together during these challenging times, and could not be happier with how we've gotten off to a strong start to the spring semester, despite the uncertainty. I think the word I probably have used most often over the past year and a half has just been the amount of uncertainty that we're faced with. The Omicron variant has presented another challenge that our students, faculty, and staff have faced with determination and resilience. And as you know, we're surrounded by an incredible infectious disease public health team of experts. You heard from Dr. Amir Barzan yesterday. We were talking about him at the game last night. He's incredible, and he's one of several members of that team. And so I just want to publicly acknowledge all of them for being by our side as we've made decisions, not just for us here at Carolina, but oftentimes getting on a call alongside Dr. Burks and others, for the system office to help the other system schools. And so we're proud to be leading in that area and allowing us to ensure that we can conduct our operations safely here on campus. Also want to just thank Chair Bullock and every member of this board for your guidance and work on behalf of the university. As Chair Bullock just said, you provide a lot to moving us forward, and we're grateful for all that you do. And a special thanks to Student Body President Lamar Richards for your leadership and advocacy on behalf of our students. I know we're celebrating the 100-year anniversary of student government here at Carolina, and going to be together with your team later today talking more about that. So thanks for all that you're doing. I want to also take the opportunity to briefly acknowledge and thank Executive Vice Chancellor and Provost Bob Bluen for his leadership and service over the past 4.5 years. Unfortunately, Bob could not join us today. He's back in Kentucky on a personal commitment that he had there. But I will personally convey everyone's gratitude to Bob Bluen, and we will acknowledge him formally at a meeting later this year, as Chair Bullock and I have talked about this. But as you know, Bob has worked on a wide-ranging set of issues, from strategic planning to academic and operational administration. He helped lead and coordinate the effort to develop the strategic plan that we talked about yesterday. And he's helped guide us through the challenges of the past 2 years, stepping up whenever I need somebody to run point on convening all the team every Tuesday morning for a meeting and a call where we talk through the latest data and think about whether we need to adjust our plan. And Bob has worked tirelessly in that effort during really a difficult time. And, he's been a resolute leader and a great partner by my side and by the side of many here on our campus. And so I'm just enormously grateful to Bob Bluen for dedicating himself to serving Carolina and our people. And I know that many of you have already had the opportunity to express that to him. Our next provost is in the back of the room. I think I saw Chris Clemens. Chris is with us today and was with us yesterday. He will officially begin his role as Executive Vice Chancellor and Provost Tuesday, February the 1st. Chris has been at Carolina since 1998, and I've had the benefit of working alongside him on several initiatives over the past decade. And I will tell you, and I think you heard it yesterday when Chris was at the podium talking about the new School for Data Science and Society. He is passionate about the things that are important in advancing opportunities for our faculty, staff, and students. And I know that he's going to do a great job. He is well suited for this role as Chief Academic Officer, and I know that he'll do an excellent job, and you're going to enjoy working alongside him. I also do want to thank you all for approving my recommendation to you for Chris McClure Chris, as you know, is our Chief Strategy Officer, and will do a fantastic job as the Assistant Secretary to the board. Chris has been a member of our leadership team in the South Building for about 1.5 years now. Does a great job. He very versatile and can plug and play, and any issue that we're dealing with, Chris is usually on it, and we got an answer back in no time. So Chris, thanks for agreeing to serve in this role. I want to also take this opportunity to thank publicly my Chief of Staff, Amy Locklear-Hertel. As you know, Dr. Hertel started as, she's held a number of roles here at Carolina, but was brought in as Chancellor Folt's Chief of Staff about 4.5 years ago, and has done an incredible job for me over the past 3 years. We'll be moving into the new role of Executive Vice Provost for Academic Affairs starting next Tuesday, working alongside Chris. You've done an incredible job. We are grateful for all you've done, and I'm glad that you're only going to be one door away. So thank you. And sitting not too far from Dr. Hertel is Dr. Christy Hurt, who many of you also know has held a number of roles here at Carolina and will be stepping in next Tuesday as new Chief of Staff to the Chancellor. Christy, thank you for being here. And I wanted to be sure that everybody had a chance to see you, and you're going to be working closely with us as well. And then, because I don't know that I did this in a previous meeting, but Tom Shanahan, I think, is in the back here. Tom stepped in, as you know, back about 6-7 months ago, serving in the role of acting Chief Administrative Officer, has really done a great job of helping to coordinate a number of our efforts. When you're the size of this enterprise is, as you well know, as we talked about yesterday, just looking at the budget, and it's huge. And Tom has really helped to coordinate some of our efforts, made us more efficient. I talked to the board about this back in July, about needing to have someone that could help both me as Chancellor and the Provost in coordinating a number of projects and efforts. So Tom, thank you, and you're doing a great job. And so I just wanted to provide you with a few updates on leadership transitions, and I think we're in a really great place. Because we haven't convened for a regular meeting since November, I wanted to also share some highlights from the end of the past semester. And Chair Bolett's already hit on some of them, so I'm not going to say much more about them. But you know, as we do begin the new semester, we're always proud to be among the nation's leading public universities. And since we last convened, we were ranked number 5 among public universities for the 21st consecutive year by U.S. News and World Report, something that's very important to us, and ranked 3rd among publics for the Times Wall Street Journal rankings. And so we kind of look closely at both of those. We climbed to 10th place overall for best value, and maintained our top ranking as the best value for public universities for the 17th consecutive year. That one to me is maybe more important than anything, and something I know we're committed to. And I, you know, as I look at Governor Powers, that this is really important to the Board of Governors and the General Assembly around value and quality and accessibility. Our research enterprise once again exceeded $1 billion in total awards, and Dr. Magnuson will be up to talk here shortly about where we're headed for this year. And as you heard yesterday, we announced 3 Rhodes Scholars this year, the most Carolina has ever had in 1 year. Again, a tribute to the world-class faculty that we have and the staff that work closely to help to push those individuals forward in these extremely competitive competitions. Also another highlight of the year, and I know that Chair Bullock was there alongside me and a few of the other trustees, but we placed 2 new names on buildings back in late in the fall. The Henry Owl Hall over at the Student Affairs Building, and the Hortense McClinton Hall, one of our residence halls. And that was a special day as we convened with their families. Granted, it was a Zoom event, but we're going to get them here on campus soon to celebrate that. And I want to thank the board for accepting the recommendation to rename those 2 halls. That was a really important day for our campus community, so thank you. We Recently, our Carolina Covenant team announced that it won a $250,000 grant from the Strata Education Network, which will enable us to expand career development services for our Covenant scholars. We'll be hearing more about Carolina Covenant with Candace Powell at our board meeting in March. I've asked her to present on our Connecting Carolinas Covenant programs alongside representation from the General Alumni Association on the networking opportunities. And then, as David Ruth presented yesterday, we recently passed the $4.25 billion milestone in the capital campaign and the campaign for Carolina. And the impact of this effort is felt on our campus today and will benefit generations of Carolina students to come. And as I told faculty at faculty council meeting about 2 weeks ago, you don't reach a campaign goal of $4.25 billion a year early. 4.25 billion. David, I don't think we raised 4.25 billion a year, but with the team you have, we probably could. But we did that over several years. But you don't reach it a year early, that target, if people don't believe in this magical place that we all love. And there are people here that make these investments because they believe in Carolina. They know that it's worth investing in, and we continue the campaign. We will continue this campaign for the next 11 months with a real focus on the areas that David highlighted yesterday, where we still need to meet some goals, but also try to expand on professorships for faculty. That's going to help us in the rankings that I just mentioned. And for scholarship and aid for our students. And I know that we're going to do that alongside David, an incredible team, many of whom were here yesterday. So thank you for all that you're doing there to help get us through the next 11 months in the campaign. And while the campaign will have a significant impact, the foundation that makes it all possible is the generous funding provided by the General Assembly. And we've talked about that on several occasions just in this meeting. And the state budget passed at the end of last year, included some really important implications for our campus that Chair Bola highlighted already. And so I'm just really pleased that we're going to have the funding of this, around R&R and the salary increases for our employees is so critical, and knowing that there are raises over each of the next 2 years is really important as we move forward. And so Chair Bullock's already hit on most of these, so I'm going to just say that I appreciate the board's support as we in advocating for this funding, but also the partnership and ensuring that the good stewardship of the funding that we get from the General Assembly. And that's equally important. And I'm committed to working alongside you to do this. So with that, I am thrilled to introduce to you Vice Chancellor for Research, Terry Magnuson. And we are incredibly proud of how our research enterprises continue to lead the way in making Carolina one of the premier research institutions in the world. Those investments pay long-term dividends, not only for the university and its mission of discovery, but for the economy of North Carolina and the nation. And so I wanted to take an opportunity today to have Dr. Magnuson talk about this effort. He has developed the roadmap for our research teams, and we're going to showcase some of the incredible work of this enterprise by two of our superstar faculty researchers. So, Vice Chancellor Magnuson.
Thank you, Chancellor, and good morning, Mr. Chairman and fellow trustees. Thank you for the invitation to come and speak and highlight two of our major research programs out of many, many, many outstanding research programs that we have. I would like to start, wrong way. Well, I'd like to start to give a general overview of the economic impact of our research enterprise on North Carolina. So in fiscal year 20, we had $1.16 billion in research expenditures, which employed 10,420 employees, paying $385 million in salaries, $96 million in purchases from 3,500 North Carolina businesses in 89 different counties. So our research enterprise does impact North Carolina economy. In FY20, our research awards reached $1.07 billion, which is the best research award in any fiscal year ever. And we look into FY22 right now, and we're about 7 months into the fiscal year, and we're running 10% over where we were in FY21 at that time. So I think we are really on a good trajectory to beat what we did in FY21. So I'm very pleased and very proud of all of our faculty and research staff and the work that they do. An important part of research is this pipeline, discovery to development to market. So over on the left side is where our research awards fund, and that's UNC Research, fundamental research, focusing on investigation, discovery, and development. Over on the right side is Innovate Carolina, with investments to bring work to commercialization and go to market. And what we want to do is navigate the way from the left side to the right side. And what we've done is to create the Institute for Convergent Science. And the ICS has established a major collaboration with the North Carolina Collaboratory. And the goal here is translation and pre-commercialization. And it's really working on product development, technology, and de-risking it so it can jump over into the Innovate Carolina side. So our investigators now have a go-to place where they get input to navigate through this pipeline. And if you look around the circle, there are several different entities around campus, including the ICS and the collaboratory, that can provide funds for investigators to de-risk some of the products to move into commercialization. And today we're going to hear from two speakers. One is on the upper right side, Pinnacle Hill. This speaker has some products, translational products that Pinnacle Hill is investing in. Pinnacle Hill is a venture between Deerfield Investments and UNC, and Deerfield is putting funds into de-risking things pre-commercialization so it can jump over into the commercial market. The other speaker that we'll hear from is over on UNC Research, fundamental research, working on solar energy to create fuels. So the first speaker is Lindsay James, who's an assistant professor in the School of Pharmacy, and she works on therapeutics for multiple myeloma. She has a very strong NIH-funded program, but she's got one particular therapeutic that is right on the border to being able to jump into commercialization. So she has moved into Pinnacle Hill, and Deerfield has provided $3.1 million so far to help her program move forward in terms of de-risking and pushing it into the commercial world. And she will talk about that. Our second speaker is Jerry Meyer, and his group received a $40 million award from the Department of Energy. And what their goal is, they're serving as the lead institution of a consortium, and the focus is really solar energy to liquid fuels. So we're looking at two ends of our spectrum here for presentations this morning. So we're going to start with Lindsay, and then we'll follow with Jerry. So.
All right, thank you, Terry. And thank you all for the invitation to speak today and tell you a little bit about the work in my lab and our interest in translational research, both at UNC and in academia in general. This is a very nice change of pace for me. I'm actually on maternity leave with my third child, so it's nice to be in a room with adults and again have a nice change of pace. If I could. As Terry mentioned, I am an assistant professor in the School of Pharmacy and Chemical Biology and Medicinal Chemistry and Director of Chemical Biology for the Center for Drug Discovery at UNC. The problem that my lab is trying to tackle is that there are a number of different regulatory proteins that are misregulated, and they are an emerging hallmark of disease. Importantly, there are new examples of disease-associated proteins that are rapidly emerging, and they're emerging at a rate that we as scientists really can't keep up with. There's this body of disease-associated proteins that are understudied. And so what is our solution? Well, as medicinal chemists and chemical biologists, we develop small molecule compounds that bind these proteins and block their function when they're misregulated. So essentially when they're performing their function at potentially the wrong time or the wrong place and leading to disease. And so there are kind of three main questions that we think about when developing small molecules. So first, are these proteins that we're interested, are they druggable? So can we design small molecules that essentially fit into the pockets of these proteins in a very precise manner? So almost like a puzzle piece. Secondly, can we use small molecules to increase our biological understanding? So, can we use these molecules to understand if these proteins are drivers of disease? And then third, are these inhibitors likely to lead to desirable clinical outcomes? So if we treat cancer cells in culture with our compounds, are we able to slow the growth of these cancer cells, or potentially are we going to promote the growth of these cancer cells? And so, this is a really important question for us because we want to use our results from these types of experiments to be able to excite pharma, and other groups into potentially investing more deeply into developing drugs for the targets that we're interested in. We are a fairly small academic group, and we think about developing tool compounds for these proteins that we're interested in. And these tool compounds are able to ask a specific question about biology. But ultimately, what we're really interested in is taking these tool compounds to the next step, making them molecules that are potentially both safe and effective to go into the clinic and potentially go into humans. Because ultimately, what drives us is to be able to help people. And so we're so fortunate that there are so many opportunities at UNC that enable us to facilitate this translational research. So we're essentially trying to take things from, what might end in a, high impact publication and take it to the point where we can take the projects further and ultimately lead to compounds that might help people and develop novel therapeutics. So I'm just going to spend the next few minutes touching on the project that Terry mentioned that's been picked up by Pinnacle Hill. And potentially one other example, but again, the opportunities at UNC really are numerous. And so my lab takes basically an unbiased approach as far as disease area. So we have expertise in developing compounds for a specific type of proteins. And once we develop those molecules, we try and figure out what these proteins do in different diseases. And so one area that we've ventured into in a project in the past few years is in the area of multiple myeloma. And so multiple myeloma cells are abnormal plasma cells, and they build up in the bone marrow and form tumors in many bones of the body. So it's the second most common blood cancer. And it's still unknown why many people get multiple myeloma, making it very hard to treat. And it's an area of unmet medical needs. So the currently marketed agents generally do not overcome this negative prognosis. Drug resistance is essentially considered to be inevitable. And we really lack a reliable curative strategy. So talking to many of the multiple myeloma experts on campus, it was very clear that really new therapeutic strategies are needed to treat this cancer. And so, from our perspective as medicinal chemists, we want to come at it by developing novel pharmacological tools to really better understand multiple myeloma biology and be able to treat patients with this disease. And so the Pinnacle Hill Partnership is what has really made this translation from our early academic world to the clinic a reality. And so this project started as an academic collaboration with a group at the University of Toronto, specifically Cheryl Aerosmith's group. And we had a lot of early success in developing small molecules that bound a target of interest that was implicated as a key driver in multiple myeloma. From there, we were able to use this preliminary data, and I was able to secure funding from the National Cancer Institute to try new technologies for drugging this protein, as well as to advance the current molecules that we had been developing. And so you can see, this initial government funding was really pivotal to be able to advance the project and to develop the data that we needed to kind of excite external partners to potentially invest in the project further. And so it was about at this time that the partnership between Deerfield and UNC was established. And so I pitched this project to Pinnacle Hill and the Deerfield folks, and was fortunate enough that they were interested in investing in the project. And so this has been a pandemic project. We started at about beginning of 2020, and we've been able to make a lot of progress. And I think Pinnacle Hill has really been very visible on campus and an amazing way for us faculty to think about how we can take our early discoveries to the next level. And John Collins has been kind of the liaison, a UNC employee, but between the UNC faculty and the Deerfield folks to be able to really forge what's been a really great relationship between these two groups. And so while I'm not going to go into the science of the project, I just do want to highlight a few aspects that I think are important as far as how this project has been going. So it's a highly collaborative project involving faculty, involving myself from UNC and folks from my lab. So the trainees have really been able to learn an immense amount about drug discovery and have gone on to get great jobs, I think, participating in these types of translational projects. It also involves scientists from Deerfield as well as scientists from CROs that collectively have an immense amount of experience in drug discovery, far more than what I could bring to the table. We have shared goals around both basic science, therapeutic development, and commercialization, which is really important because we're focused on the long goal, but we also have some basic science questions that we're trying to answer to better understand what we're doing. We've identified molecules that are now in preclinical development with the goal of identifying molecules that will be safe to be able to go into humans in clinical trials. We did file intellectual property based on the molecules that were developed solely at UNC at the end of 2021 and have additional IP filings in mind for 2022. The Pinnacle resources have really been instrumental in rapidly advancing the project in a way that I think otherwise would have been quite challenging, if not impossible. And while there are resources that are coming from Pinnacle Hill, there are also an immense amount of resources at UNC. So working with multiple myeloma clinicians, we've been able to get access to clinical cells, clinical samples, and things that we can use to advance the project. And I think, kind of one thing that I can highlight to show how successful this has been is that we are discussing new projects as well. So, both Pinnacle Hill and Deerfield, as well as my group, have been so pleased and happy with how things are going that, we have visions for potentially other projects that we can work on collaboratively. And so, while the Pinnacle Hill experience has been really fabulous, there are a lot of other translational opportunities at UNC that I've been able to take advantage of. And, just one I'm going to touch on real briefly is the Eshelman Institute for Innovation as well, which many of you may be familiar with. This stemmed from a $100 million donation from Fred Eshelman a number of years ago. And so they have a really similar mission in thinking about translational ideas and commercialization to make a real world impact and help patients. And so I've had 3 funded projects from the Eshelman Institute, ranging from small pilot projects to large projects. And what's been really nice is my most recent project is focused on a new target also involved in multiple myeloma. So we've been able to use these 2 different avenues to advance translational science, but also create some synergy within the lab and create learnings from, one funding mechanism to advance translational science as well as a second mechanism. And so, we're hoping that these two approaches will really be able to enable us to make important advancements in the area of multiple myeloma. So with that, I hope I've been able to highlight, that these opportunities at UNC they're really game changers for faculty like myself. To be able to advance our science and ultimately, have an impact both in North Carolina and more broadly, and help people. And so I'll just acknowledge folks in my lab as well as some of the folks in the Center for Drug Discovery, including Stephen Fry and John Collins at Pinnacle Hill. And I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Lindsay, this is fantastic and really exciting work. How long until you would anticipate it getting into clinical trials? And then how long, once you're in the clinical trial phase?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd like to be optimistic and hope that, we might have something to go into the clinic in the next year. And when you think about how long drug discovery can be in the scheme of things, that's actually not that long, considering we only started 2 years ago. But we have a lot to do still in terms of putting molecules in vivo in animals. We're currently, again, trying to optimize their properties. I remain optimistic. We're using a new technology, and there's a lot still to be understood as far as how this technology will do in the clinic. But hopefully, we're looking at the next few years.
And if it works with multiple myeloma, are there other illnesses and cancers?
Yeah, that's great. So the one protein we're working on that's funded by Pinnacle Hill, the primary indication has been multiple myeloma, but has also been implicated in other cancers such as prostate cancer, acute lymphoid leukemia, and breast cancer. So, we kind of took the strategy of focusing in one area, but I do think that if it is successful and becomes a clinically approved compound, we will be excited, to partner with clinicians at UNC and other areas to see if we can expand our impact. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay. And now we'll have Jerry Meyer talk about solar energy.
All right. Thank you very much, Terry, and everyone for this opportunity to tell you about some of the research we're doing here at UNC and give you a little bit of an overview of what we call CHASE, the Center for Hybrid Approaches in Solar Energy to Liquid Fuels. And as Terry mentioned, that's a $40 million DOE grant. We're in about our 15th month right now. So CHASE itself is centered on the creation of liquid fuels. And when we got the very happy phone call from the Department of Energy, what we were told was, if you can take the small molecules in air as your only chemical feedstocks, mainly water, CO2, and nitrogen, and using sunlight as your only energy source, convert that to a liquid fuel that can be stored and transported. If you can do that in 5 years, you'll be renewed and perhaps expanded to a larger level. So this is a grand challenge. It's something that's never been done before. As Terry mentioned, it's very much on the fundamental research side. We're hoping for practical applications, and we think there's an opportunity to really make a game change here and lead to a sustainable form of energy that can be used by future generations. So our mission is stated here: to develop the fundamental science necessary to do this. And our approach is to use what we call hybrid photoelectrodes. And I'm going to go through very carefully in a few slides, tell you a little chemistry about how we're doing this, but the general cartoon is shown here. They're molecules that are catalytic, that can perform functions that we want them to, attached to light absorbing semiconductors like silicon, that will do this chemistry. So CHASE itself is centered here at UNC-Chapel Hill. I'm very fortunate to have some wonderful collaborators and a very strong chemistry department here. In particular, I'd like to call out Jillian Dempsey, who is my deputy director. We work very closely together. Jillian right now has COVID, as does her infant son, so she wasn't able to join us today. But she's been just terrific and helping to organize this during the challenging times of COVID. The 6 partner institutions are shown here. UNC is on the top. It's predominantly chemistry, and Renee Lopez in physics as well. We also are developing a staff to house synthetic solar fuels labs, as well as a spectroscopy lab to understand the fundamental chemistry. We have partner institutions at Yale, Penn, Emory, North Carolina State, and then at Brookhaven National Labs and their artificial photosynthesis group. So it's a large consortium made up on the East Coast, and we're all working together toward this general challenge. So what do we need to make this work? Our approach is to use traditional semiconducting materials as the light absorbers. Materials like silicon have been the backbone of the electronics industry for decades, and they are the photovoltaic material. Greater than 95% of all solar cells are based on silicon, and there's no indication that that's going to change in the near term. So we're going to attach to materials like silicon these LMNs. These are molecular catalysts. These are transition metal complexes typically that are going to do the heavy lifting. They're going to be the ones that generate fuels, these molecules attached to surfaces. The semiconductors themselves absorb the light and separate charge. So a material like silicon absorbs all visible light. It's black in color and it harvests light. And as I said, it's the backbone of the photovoltaics industry. It itself cannot solve the energy problem, however, because when the sun sets at night, we don't have a way to generate power. So if we could integrate molecular catalysts with semiconductors that absorb light, we have an exciting opportunity to generate fuels that can be used when the sun is set. And that very much is what semiconductors also have, some kind of magical behaviors that they're able to separate charge. That is, when a photon is absorbed, we can create both a reducing equivalent and an oxidizing equivalent to make these fuels. And we want to direct one of those carriers toward the catalyst and the other one away. And by using molecular dipoles as well as the built-in electric field, we know that we can do that. A knock against this molecular approach, and one that we are very concerned about early on, was that molecules under sunlight conditions often aren't stable. They tend to degrade and do reaction chemistry that takes it off our catalytic cycles. So a big challenge for us is to stabilize molecules under the fuel forming conditions, under one sun illumination, on hot days, on cold days, for real world applications. And we're going to do that by tailoring the microenvironment around the catalyst to make it perform under conditions where the durability will be enhanced. And there's precedence for this in the organometallic literature. And we're hopeful we can extend that to suns, and we have some ideas that have pushed forward to do that. Another challenge that we have in advancing this research is that the catalysts we have, for example, for CO2 reduction, produce carbon products that only have one carbon nuclei. What we'd like to do, of course, is make gasoline, things that have 6 carbon atoms or 8 carbon or even more. And we don't have molecular catalysts that can do that. So I think one thing that's very unique about Chase, as opposed to other solar centers that you might hear about, is that we're going to use multiple catalysts. One catalyst that might convert something like CO2 to methanol, a C1 product, but then a secondary catalyst that I've shown here in pink that would take that methanol product and convert it to a carbon-carbon bonded product that we could store, that would be less volatile, that we could pipe. The Department of Energy is very interested in pipeable fuels, and they see you need at least 3 carbon atoms to be able to pipe it away. So we call this cascade catalysis. It's well known in organometallic literature, but has never been done before with solar type research. The cascade literally might use gravity, where we make a C1 product at a photoelectrode and then flow it downstream to a second catalyst, or they may be linked to the same surface so that one intermediate gets handed off to another catalyst, and we can drive this kind of chemistry. But the goal, of course, is to get high value liquid fuels like butanol and isooctane. Now, our research was very much driven by a Department of Energy priority research opportunity in liquid solar fuels. These were their PROs, as they called them, priority research opportunities. There are 4 of them. And when we wrote this proposal, we proposed specific experiments that covered all 4 of the areas. And we're going to address then very fundamental chemistry in how do you control electron transfer and proton coupled electron transfer across interfaces? How do we understand the mechanisms of these catalytic cycles when they're occurring at semiconductor surfaces? Can we control the microenvironment to keep on a catalytic cycle that we want? And can we bridge the timescales? The good thing about our sun is that we have a lot of solar photons. The unfortunate thing is that they're a fairly weak light source. So we need to couple these multi-electron, multi-proton reactions that we'd like to drive with a fairly weak light source. And how do we do that? And then finally, how do we get these complex phenomena like tailoring an environment where one catalyst could hand off an intermediate to a second catalyst and do a carbon-carbon bond formation, and then another one to get to the kind of products that we'd like. So there's an exciting opportunity here. It's very much at the fundamental level, but practical applications hopefully are not too far down the line. Using a basketball analogy, I call the group that's working with me the dream team. It's really been a fantastic opportunity, even during COVID. Right after COVID ended, I took the initiative to jump in my car and visit all the site institutions. There's tremendous enthusiasm. People want to come here to UNC to use some of the resources that we're building in the chemistry department here. We're slowly getting our ways to a world-class infrastructure with the staff that I briefly showed you. I think we have terrific leadership here at UNC as well as at our partner institution, and a real desire to solve this important problem, and that's key. So with that, I'll just acknowledge the Department of Energy. Again, thank you for this opportunity, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board? Trustee Meekins, do you want to grab the mic there from Trustee Bryan?
Just fascinating what you just presented. And I'm a little curious, before you get the grant, what kind of work goes into obtaining that grant, and what competition do you have?
That's a really good question, and I can't tell you how hard the work was to get that. I came here as a part of an energy frontier research center, an EFRC. I was hired from Johns Hopkins University about 7 years ago. And these were much smaller grants, about 1/4 the size of what we have now. And the solar hub, as they called it, was all set at Caltech. And they had been receiving $100 million for 10 years. And a call for proposals came out to say, maybe we're going to fund 2, maybe we're going to do. And sort of the scuttlebutt in the field was, don't even bother writing a proposal because they're just going to give the money to Caltech, and Berkeley was their main partner. But we felt, as a result of our energy frontier research work and the team that we had, that we could be competitive. And I believe there were 10 teams altogether that competed for this grant. And what made it particularly difficult was a very short DOE timeline. They asked for a pre-proposal, and then less than a month later, it was a 40-page proposal. And that's just the scientific part. The proposal itself was this thick. So the team that I showed you, several investigators in particular, worked really nonstop. One of my colleagues said to me, you need to read this again, Jerry. And I said, my eyes are going to start to bleed if I read this again. But I did. I stayed up and did it. And I wasn't the only one. So it really was a huge effort, also to get the cost share and other things in place in such a short time period. But I think we banded together a little bit, and we found out who worked together well and who didn't a little bit during that time. So it was a good opportunity. And fortunately, we were successful.
And Jerry, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we are have one of the longest standing DOE funded centers in the country.
That's correct. Yeah. Tom Meyer, who is no relation to me at all, came here, and the very first time under President Obama was when these Energy Frontier Research Centers were started. And we went through 3 renewals. And in fact, there was about 6 months of overlap between the EFRC and this hub. The EFRC itself just ended this past July officially. 17, I think, yeah.
Any other questions from trustees? So when I got elected chair, I had a couple of former chairs call me, and so I want to, and Dr. Meyer, this wasn't necessarily your area, but Dr. James, maybe more in your area, and COVID had, has grasp on us and still does to this to some extent, and we're emerging out of it. But he told me about the importance of fundamental research, and you mentioned that today, and the fundamental research that is accomplished every day at places like UNC-Chapel Hill that make, for example, the vaccines possible. Without that, I mean, when I graduated high school, I think DNA was 3 pages in the back of the biology book. And it said, we have this thing called DNA, and maybe you'll learn about it in college. And that's fundamental research, how cells work, and that enables you guys to take it to the next level. So just want you to know that we thank you for all that you do on behalf of the university, on behalf of the state of North Carolina. And that fundamental research, I think, is so vitally important, because then it leads to Dr. James's extensional research to actual solutions. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay and Jerry. One point I do want to make that Jerry mentioned, to get a big award like this requires cost share. And what that means is the university has to put money on the table. And if we don't, we wouldn't even be considered. And so that's the importance of having our F&A, where we're able to match and bring a lot more money back into the university. So thank you for listening. And I can tell you, we could come to every board meeting with major interesting stories all across campus. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to take a 10-minute break. Okay, great. Just wanted to clarify that Dean Kashuba is doing a great job over there, and I must have had her on my mind. The chancellor and I actually met with her at UNC Pembroke in a joint effort to work with UNCP and UNC with respect to graduating students and matriculating students at UNC Pembroke, moving to the pharmacy program at Chapel Hill. Dr. Hertel was also present at that meeting, had a fantastic meeting. She was great. And that's a good relationship that we have with our sister institution. Also wanted to make one other clarifying remark. Student Body President Lamar Richards asked not to give remarks today. And so I honored his request not to give remarks. So at this time, also while we're here, I want to thank Dr. Magnuson for okay, test. Okay, let me test this mic out because we're getting some feedback. Is it the mic by the podium? Oh, it's coming. Guess you could turn the volume on the monitor down. Okay, let's try it now. Yeah, there's no reverb now. Okay, great. Thank you. We'll move on with the committee again. In case anybody missed it, I did misstate in my chair remarks that there was a search for the pharmacy school. There is not an ongoing search. And I did want to reiterate that student body president and trustee Lamar Richards had asked not to give remarks today. And so I honored that request. At this time, I'll call on trustee Codis, chair of the Audit, Compliance, and Risk Management Committee for a report.
Thank you, Chair Bullock. Yesterday, we had the inaugural meeting of the Audit, Compliance, and Risk Management Committee. I appreciate Chancellor Guskowitz and Chair Bullock establishing that committee. It mirrors the structure of the Board of Governors, where my chair of the Audit Committee back in 2013, 2014 was Fred Eshelman. So I will try and live up to his high standards. The idea of the committee is to prevent bad things from happening. You know, it's when you hear audit, it's a little overbearing, but the idea is to avoid bad things from occurring. So we heard a report yesterday from Dean Weber, who is the Chief Audit Officer, going over the fiscal year 2022 work plan and achievements, talking about his plans for the year. Was very impressive. And that touches on all aspects of the university. It's not just financial, but it's looking into other elements as well, including things like faculty and tenure promotion equity. Then we heard a report from Vice Chancellor George Battle regarding the police chief search. This is a critical role for the university. You know, you only need to look at what occurred in Charlotte in April of 2019 with the shooting there, where Chief Baker and his team had to respond with the assistance of the student hero Riley Howell to a shooting. And, you know, these are people that are running towards danger instead of away from it. And I feel like it's very important for this committee to address and support our law enforcement officers. So I was pleased that we're making good progress in that search. And lastly, we heard from Dr. Amir Barzan with an update on COVID responses and provided clarity that the vaccination rates are very high, that the ability to mandate vaccines is outside of our purview or the Board of Governors purview, and that's handled by the Department of Health and Human Services at the state level, and that our testing rates have been strong. And while this is a very contagious variant out there, we are dealing admirably with it, and our numbers are 1/3 of what's occurring in the state. So there were, all these presentations were for information only, and there were no required votes for the full board. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Chairman Codis. This time I'll call on Trustee Parent Jones, Chair of the Strategic Initiatives Committee, for a report.
Thank you, Chair Bullock. The Strategic Initiatives Committee heard a presentation from Chancellor Guskowitz on Carolina Next, Innovations for Public Good Strategic Plan Progress, and a presentation on leadership training for students from Mark McNeely, professor of the practice at the Keenan Flagler Business School. These presentations were for information only, and there are no items to vote on for the full board. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Jones. This time I'll call on Vice Chair of the Board, John Pryor, Chair of the Finance, Infrastructure, and Audit. Well, currently that's the name of it, but we're going to change that to Budget, Finance, and Infrastructure. since audit has been moved over to a separate committee. So Trustee Pryor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Budget, Finance, and Infrastructure Committee met yesterday and considered 5 action items and 4 informational items. As for the action items, the committee considered and approved 2 spending authority requests for Taylor Hall and Porthole Alley projects, both of which the committee had heard previous presentations on. The committee then considered and approved the site plan for the Porthole Alley project. And we referenced the importance of the economic development component of this for Franklin Street and what it would entail for the front door of the university and the upfit that it needs and deserves. The committee also considered and approved the design for the Keenan Football Center renovation and expansion, also an item that we have seen previously on multiple occasions. Last action item, the committee considered and approved a proposed donation of Phillips Island for use by the Institute of Marine Sciences for their research purposes. These action items were all approved by the committee, and I'd like to make a motion to approve them in block together by the full board now. Mr. Chairman, you want to? All those in favor, please say aye. Any no? The ayes have it. So approved. As for the informational items, Vice Chancellor Nate Knuffman presented a budget update and review of the comprehensive annual financial report to the committee. There is a great deal of data in that annual financial report. And from the previous iterations of it, I have not seen the new one until we got it yesterday, but I would encourage everybody to go through it because there is a lot of interesting data and that is compiled in a way that is actually very user-friendly and easy to get through. So appreciate that. And Vice Chancellor Knuffman and Anna Wu, the Associate Vice Chancellor for Facilities, provided an update on the 2021 through 23 capital program. I asked them to please give us a sample of 10 to 12 projects and how the architect's office has done with a look back on forecasted costs versus actual costs, forecasted time of completion versus actual time of completion, so we could have a little bit of look at how things are going sort of operationally. Lastly, a preliminary design review presentation was given by University architect Avanyasky on the Cone Kenfield Tennis Center and Finley Golf Course projects. Dr. Jones provided some helpful context on the need for the upgrades of the Cone Kenfield Tennis Center, and that concluded our business.
Thank you, Chair Pryor. I did want to point out, I did have a chance to look through the annual comprehensive financial report, and Vice Chair Pryor is right. There's a ton of good information in there. I would point out one thing, that the Board of Trustees had endorsed the Chancellor's recommendation to increase enrollment at the undergraduate level. And as 2020-21 compared to 2019-20, there was an increase of 263 undergraduate students enrolled at the university. I believe it's the largest undergraduate class in the history of the university. For 2 years in a row, we've accomplished that. And so I think that speaks a lot to having a plan and following through with that plan. At this time, I'll call on Trustee Rob Bryan, Chair of the University Affairs Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The University Affairs Committee heard from the employee forum, the forum's chair, Katie Musgrove, yesterday. We also heard from the graduate and professional student President Neil Swamy. Appreciated both those reports and continue to work on good communication. We had an update on the data science initiative that was provided by Chancellor Guskowitz and our Executive Vice Provost and Provost-elect Chris Clemens, and the Chief Operating Officer of RENCI and Research Professor of Computer Science, JACAT. These presentations were for information only, and there are no items to vote on. Despite the great excitement on the data science initiative that we look forward to continue to move forward on. Becky Mangini, Vice President and Chancellor of Human Resources and Equal Opportunity and Compliance, provided a presentation on the SAAO Tier 2 approvals process. Chair Bullock put forth a resolution to authorize Chancellor Guskowitz and Vice Chancellor Mangini to approve Tier 2 appointments in consultation with the board chair and chair's designee between now and the next regular board meeting in March. Additionally, Chair Bullock requested that the Assistant Secretary and Counsel's Office identify any needed amendments to the board bylaws to create a subgroup of trustees that will approve Tier 2 appointments after that March meeting. The resolution was approved by committee, and I would make a motion now to approve this resolution as a full board.
We have a motion to approve the resolution. Do we have a second? Have a second from Trustee Artis Neal and Trustee Davis. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? All right. Motion passes. Thank you, Chair Brian.
Additional items were discussed in closed session, which will.
We'll have additional personnel matters coming out of University Affairs in closed session. I'd like to at this time call on Trustee Ali Ray McCullen for a report on external affairs.
Thank you. The External Relations Committee heard a development update from David Ruth, Vice Chancellor for Development, a communications update from both Beth Keith, Associate Vice Chancellor for Strategic Communications, and Tanya Moore, Associate Vice Chancellor for Campus and Community Communications. Finally, we heard a legislative update from both Christopher McClure, Senior Advisor and Chief Strategy Officer, and Kelly Dockham, Director of Federal Affairs. These presentations and updates were for information only, and there are no items to vote on for the full board. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair McCullen. One second, Mr. Secretary. Thank you. At this time, I'd call on the Board Secretary, Malcolm Turner, for a motion, please.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board convene in closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute Section 143-318.11 A1 to prevent the disclosure of privileged information under Section 126-22 and also pursuant to Section 143-318.11 A2, A3, A5, A6, A7, and A9.
Do I have a second to that motion? Second, I have a second from Trustee Artis Neal. Let me say that the agenda for closed session, we will have a report from University Affairs dealing with personnel matters. We'll have a legal update from the Vice Chancellor and General Counsel, Charles Marshall. The printed agenda says report of the External Relations Committee as amended yesterday. We did not go into closed session in external relations, and we moved discussion of honorary degrees to the full board closed session. Is there any further discussion on that matter? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? All right, we will give folks 5 minutes to clear out, and then we'll be in closed session. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We are back into open session upon motion, second, and approval to come back into open session. I'll call on Trustee Rob Bryan, Chair of the Universities Committee at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The University Affairs Committee would like to bring a motion to approve personnel items in the materials that have been before you today, including promotion and appointments, tenure for faculty and Tier 2 EHRA non-faculty administrative officers, and compensation actions for faculty and non-faculty.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Motion passes. Do I have a motion to adjourn? I have a motion. Do I have a second? Have a second. On discussion, I want to thank everybody for the meeting. I thought it was a productive meeting. And all those in favor of adjourning, say aye. Aye. And the ayes have it. Thank you.